Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of All Access AM. I am Billy Embody. Thanks for joining us. Happy Thursday, everybody. Weekend almost here. And man, we are happy to have you with us on this Thursday. What a college football coaching carousel we have witnessed this offseason. And I will share some thoughts on Sharon Moore getting fired by Michigan just briefly. It is not an ACC thing. I don't necessarily think that there will be an ACC coach hired, poached away from their current post to head up to Ann Arbor to take that job. But it is just fascinating to watch this all play out over the course of this offseason. And what a world, because somebody else's coach is going to likely be heading over there to Ann Arbor and create another round of dominoes to fall in this coaching carousel world that we've been tracking. We are live Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, 7 to 8 a.m., 8 to 9 Eastern time. We appreciate you guys for joining us. So many of you have subscribed. This week we hit 200 subscribers on our YouTube channel, so we appreciate that. Make sure you scan that QR code if you're watching maybe on your computer or your TV in the upper left or right-hand corner of your screen, and that'll take you right to the All Access AM YouTube page where you can hit that subscribe button. We are going to jump in to some bowl discussion as Pony Up 214 joins us. Welcome, Pony Up 214. Really appreciate you, as always, for tuning in. Many of you out there becoming regulars with us as we wake up in the mornings. And we'll talk about some bowls. We'll talk about the Miami Hurricanes with Stephen Wagner of CaneSport at about 8:40 a.m. Eastern time. For those of you getting a jog in on South Beach, or getting up and tooting around town in Miami, you can turn us on right there at 8:40 a.m. Eastern time to get your Canes talk ahead of the college football playoff. College football playoff gets underway next weekend, so we do have a weekend away from football in a sense, but nonetheless, plenty to talk about in this world of college football. We'll also talk about the college football playoff and changes that maybe are being stumped for now by ACC Commissioner Jim Phillips, changes that could happen to the overall layout of the bracket, to the number of teams in the field, to the way that the selection committee handles the process. That's been a large piece of the discussion points around this college football playoff reveal involving Miami, Notre Dame, Alabama, is really just the way the committee has teed up the fall of Notre Dame and the rise of Miami in the rankings. So lots to discuss in that regard, and I'm sure we'll touch on it with Stephen Wagner. We do appreciate you guys for tuning in, and I do want to tell you guys, this holiday season, don't be the one who kind of looks, not as good as you could. We've got our great friends at Horn Legend that are supporting this show, this podcast, this endeavor that we're going through, building up All Access AM, and they have free shipping when you pony this holiday season. And we know that we shared with you guys about the Black Friday sale that they did over at Horn Legend, is bringing it when it comes to the sports shirts. I can tell you this, I am pretty particular about my button downs, my sports shirts, as they're called, because I'm a sweater. I can tell you this is one of the top brands that I have ever had the pleasure of trying on and experiencing, and just the breathability. I got that Victory Grove performance woven sports shirt delivered to the house just about a couple weeks ago. I've worn it probably 3 times already, and I'm looking forward to completely remaking my collection of button downs and sports shirts. Just terrific options, different colors, different styles for you to impress your family with during the holiday season when you get ready for those pictures around the Christmas tree. And don't forget, hook up your special lady in your life, your mom, your grandma. The vests are a great look as well for a last-minute Christmas gift. So again, go to our friends at Horn Legend and get free shipping with code PONY. Their stuff is worth the price of admission there. I'm wearing the polo today. So appreciate their support of the show, and appreciate all of you who have joined us and are tuning in. If you want to help the show, again, subscribe to All Access AM on YouTube, Google AM on YouTube, and we'll be right there. and you could hit that subscribe button for me, that'd be great. Let's jump into this. The college football playoff needs changes. The college football playoff needs refining on how it does business. And the problem with the college football playoff is it's almost like a political party at this point. They just can't get messaging right. They just can't get marketing themselves the right way. And they have a common sense issue as well when it comes to that. So not outside of the realm of politics when it comes to this college football playoff committee in particular. This year's committee really had a PR nightmare on its hands from the get-go with how far they dropped Miami or debuted Miami at after the loss to SMU. They just could not ever get back on the right side of it. And the messaging that from Mack Rhoades to Hunter Yurachek, I mean, by the way, they had full-blown scandal in a sense. Baylor athletic director Mack Rhoades stepping down, midway through the process and giving way to Hunter Yurachek, who has not been prepared at all for the challenge of sharing the committee's thoughts, sharing the committee's opinions on why things are the way they are. And they need to figure out a way to dive in better on the messaging around the teams and the rankings if the reveal show that is in place is going to still be in place. And that is an ESPN question. ESPN has allowed the colleges and universities to come together really kind of after the season and share more with what they, or not share more with, and get more discussion around whether they want to expand the playoff, whether they want to tweak the overall setup and number of teams and format of the playoff. ESPN's allowed that extension into late January, I believe, for the 2026 season. And there is a lot of reason that these schools should consider and really finally kind of take the leap of faith with going to 16. And I am not necessarily a proponent of going to 16. I think 16 is a large number. I think that is a number as far as true national championship caliber programs that it opens up to. I don't want to say it defeats the purpose of a regular season, but when you have the number of games that college football has versus the NFL, college football having a 3-loss team and maybe a 4-loss team, because one day we'll get to that argument, I'm sure, if we went to 16, where you have a 3 or 4-loss team, but primarily 3-loss teams in that conversation around the college football playoff and a national championship. I would hope it works itself out with first round games, those 3-loss teams, kind of being eliminated outside of maybe major injuries or major changes that they made, like a change at quarterback that revamped their season the rest of the way, things like that. But a national champion for me in a college football season of 12 games doesn't really stand out to me if they're 9-3 going into the college football playoff. That doesn't impress me. And that isn't something that should be necessarily rewarded with a spot in the college football playoff. And in particular, the SEC or the Big Ten getting an extra team in a sense, for another shot at a national championship. And that's not to say that I'm saying that for the ACC to not get that 9-3 team in is the reason why I wouldn't want a college football playoff expansion. I'm saying that teams that are 9-3 in a regular season in college football aren't very impressive in terms of a national championship caliber program that deserves the right to get a shot to win a national championship, to go on a magical run, to figure their life out and become a team that can go win a national championship because the field is expanded. But at the same token, it eliminates, or would have in this case, eliminated the discussion around Notre Dame, who I believe, I don't want to say deserved to be in. They did lose the head-to-head to Miami. You could have controlled it better, and your schedule is something that you fully control as an independent. But I don't mind Notre Dame having a shot to win a national championship with the roster and the team that they have this year, with their 2 losses coming by a combined 4 points to top 10 teams, or 2 college football playoff teams, I should say. And that's something that's worth noting. That's something that, with this current setup, with this current group of teams, I wouldn't have minded that. But then when you get into the expansion of the field to 16, it really becomes an interesting conversation, where then you're letting in a BYU team that, look, they're 2 losses on the year. That's not bad, but they're both Texas Tech. So then, you've really got to kind of say, all right, well, they don't really have too many quality wins on their resume, in a sense. And then you have Texas in there, who, again, has lost to a bad Florida team, lost to a college football playoff team. I think they've got their brakes beat off at Georgia. They don't pass the eye test as a national champion. I mean, if we're all being honest. And then the 14th team would be Vandy. And like Clark Leah said, that team had opportunities to punch its ticket to the college football playoff with the games and the schedule that it had, and it didn't. So they're not playing the victim mentality, which, by the way, commendable. And that is something that really a lot of these athletic directors and coaches, and we didn't see too much of it outside of Notre Dame throwing a hissy fit this past week or so. But those teams that are kind of on that cusp of at least saying, hey, we're a pretty good team, we just happen to lose 3 games, they would get into a 16-team playoff. And that just doesn't excite me. That doesn't give me the warm and fuzzies as far as what we're rewarding in college football. And then if you expand it to 16, then you really need to look at these bowl games, and you really need to look at that package and reprogram that as well, which, of course, the College Football Playoff Committee is going to be like, that's not our problem. And it isn't. But there are trickle-down effects of this, I think, decision of 12 or 16 that are going to impact things on a much higher level. And I just think it would further dilute the regular season that college football teams go through. Now, you could say, okay, well, you're going to get 8 teams in right off the bat. You're going to get both teams that play for conference championships in the college football playoff. Well, guess what? For a conference like the ACC, I don't know if you want that. After this year, you wouldn't want Virginia or Duke going in because of the way they played and their losses and their overall resumes that they have. So, but it would have allowed for maybe a Duke as a conference champion to sneak in potentially. They would have been the 16 seed in all likelihood. If you're giving 5, maybe 5 AQ spots, and I assume if they went to 16, you'd edit some of that with the G5, because I think we're going to see a change around after this first round of playoff matchups. As Tom Riddell, and I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, you have his idea for the 12-team playoff, 3 teams per conference, 3 to 4 play in for the last spot, 1 and 2 teams get in, but championship game determines bye plus home field for the second game. I like that overall just initial thought right there. It's a really difficult thing to try to perfect with 12 teams, but there's a world where it can get done. I think a 5-team in as a conference champion is important. I think it has to be your Power 4 champions, and they just have to have their ticket punched. And if you want to really get down into the weeds of adjusting how we look at the college football playoff as a whole, you could really sit there and say you need to take the 4 Power 4 conference champions and they need to get in, or if one of the Power 4 conference champions is not in the top 25, you take the highest ranked team from that conference and they make it in. That way we don't have to have this stumping that goes around between the ACC and Notre Dame and all of those things. But it then eliminates, if it's just one group of 5 team, then you'd have Notre Dame in this college football playoff, and it's a pretty darn good field. And it's a field that I don't have a problem with. And you have teams like BYU, like Texas, like Vandy, like all those teams I just talked about that are sitting there saying, hey, well, we've got to just step our game back up a little bit. For Texas, Arch Manning's coming back. Okay, we got to get him better. We've got to get him ready to go. We can't lose at Florida like we did, and we'd be in the college football playoff. Those are tweaks that NFL team missed the playoffs say, all right, well, that they just missed the playoffs. We're not too far away. We've got to do a couple things here. We'll be back. That's where college football is going to be for some of these teams. You look at a team like Pitt, a team like Georgia Tech, a team like SMU in the ACC, they're sitting there saying, we didn't have the season and the finish that we wanted to on really all three of those fronts, but we're not far off. Let's tweak. Let's get, Aaron Philo fired up here for Georgia Tech. And we'll talk about Georgia Tech and their offense coordinator search really quickly in a few minutes, but let's get him going. Let's tweak our defense. We've got to fix that. And really, we had a season where we weren't too far off from being a playoff team. We can do this. Those are the conversations that need to be normalized around college football. And the sooner fans kind of put that together in their mind too, that, hey, Georgia Tech, for example, is full of disappointment, I'm sure, because of the start to the season that they had and the way they were playing for most of it. But they just couldn't, in the conference schedule, play well enough to, especially defensively, to get over that hump and get to the college football playoff and win an ACC championship. But they're not far off. And that's where you have to, with a 12-team field at minimum, you have to be sitting there as a fan base saying, okay, we're playing the Pop-Tarts Bowl. We're playing against BYU. Great opportunity to finish off the season the right way, win 10 games. And a 10-win season would be outstanding. You draw the line at having this playoff or bust mentality that wears down the people that are operating your program at a level high enough where you're in striking distance of the college football playoff, where maybe like your SMU, you got in last year, you can do it. Now you have to get your blueprint back on track to making it. Miami has finally made it now, and Mario Cristobal has got them in. It wasn't pretty. They needed help. They needed all of these things, but they did it, and they were able to make it happen. And so now they got to be talking about, okay, how do we keep this up? They'll obviously be in the market for a big-name quarterback this offseason, all of those things that have to happen. So the playoff as it stands sits there as a good number of teams most every year. They just have to fix the process. And on the flip side of that, Commissioner Jim Phillips from the ACC is talking about expanding. And for his conference, with the way it is lined up right now, and for the conference of most of our listeners out there, they need extra teams in. They need extra spots. But I would argue, be careful what you wish for here, because the Big Ten and the SEC are going to circle for more automatic qualifying spots and try to line that up. And obviously the ACC and the Big 12 are going to oppose that. They're going to go after that and try to make sure that all of those things don't happen. And that's important for those leagues to keep fighting for in that regard. And I go back and forth. There are years where it'd work out where, look, SMU, that really is a good scenario to be in, that where you have those two spots guaranteed. But if the SEC and the Big Ten are taking 4 and being set up like, they have half the playoff, that's really hard to swallow if you're an ACC person. And then those are, 4 total spots that you're never going to get. What if Pitt comes together next year? Louisville comes together next year. They figure out their quarterback situation. They open with Ole Miss. They open with a revenue or a resume boosting opportunity. SMU plays at Notre Dame next year. There are teams that have the potential next year to have resumes that, if they start off the right way and they get through non-conference in a good way, finish with 1 loss in league play, they're going to be sitting there in a good spot to be in the college football playoff, maybe as an at-large. Do you want those AQs to be already accounted for because the ACC could have a special year one of these years? That's the problem with expanding to 16. But Jim Phillips made it about this. He said, if we are talking about good teams being left out, we don't have the right number of teams. But I would argue it really is about the fact that the G5 was able to sneak 2 in to this field versus the number of teams that legitimately should be considered to win a national championship aren't in it. Like Notre Dame is that one that I think, I don't want to say unanimously, but most people would say very good team in a world where there's not 2 G5s in there. Notre Dame's in, and you're sitting there saying, okay, it's a good field. And BYU had their chance, and Texas had their chance, and Vandy had their chance, and all those teams had their chance, but they didn't take advantage. So be careful what you wish for. Jim Phillips on the college football playoff changes, but I know he's doing a couple things. He's wanting those automatic spots for the ACC to solidify the league in that regard, because when you have those automatic spots, that would be nice. But he's also, I think, taken up for Notre Dame a little bit too and getting on the right side of that. So fascinating stuff around the college football playoff and what we know. Tom asks, what do we know about the alleged agreement with Notre Dame to automatically be entered into the playoff if they finish in the top 12? And if this is true, why would the conference commissioners agree? I think that's a great point. I think as a top 12 team, you would think in most cases of outside, unless you're the ACC this year, if you're a top 12 team, you're playing in a conference championship game in a conference, right? Like every single team in the top 12 of the college football playoff, unless you're from the ACC, played for a conference championship game. And if you're in the conference championship game, you had a really good season. So I think that's where the top 12 number comes from. And I am in the boat where the appeasement of Notre Dame is just worn thin. I wonder if it's worn thin on conference commissioners, on colleges around the country. Notre Dame's a big brand. I bet ESPN that in a weird way, even though they're not an ESPN property. But if you're a conference commissioner, I agree. Why are you catering to Notre Dame? Why are you catering to Notre Dame? It doesn't make much sense to really guarantee them a spot if they're in the top 12 of the rankings. And at the same time, I see exactly why. Because if you're in the top 12, you're in the top 10 even, you're playing for a conference championship game. And that's usually a good enough level resume to be in the college football playoff. Again, unless you're the ACC in their weird ways. So very good point there from Tom. But I do wonder if Notre Dame and their hissy fit, maybe costs them a future round of negotiations at the college football playoff table and what it could look like. Pierce, appreciate you jumping on board with us on All Access AM this morning. I'd like to separate the bowls from the playoff invitational. Then the Pop-Tart matchup would be play the cotton or the rose. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I don't mind it. I mean, if you're going to look at the college football playoff, I know that the big bowl games, the cotton, the rose, would want those big time matchups in there. And they're going to obviously say, hey, look, ESPN, you get to broadcast our bowls, but you also just took them by making a 12-team field. We need the bowl games. Like, help us out here. But I agree. Or you do it where it's I don't know how you do it, but I agree. I think having the cotton, having the rose, having some of these other ones, and putting them in their normal spots, and having college football playoff games instead, where you secure neutral site fields for them and do things like that, that could be something. But yeah, it would also help the bowl system, and then you could maybe eliminate some of the bottom level bowl games that are not in good spots to be played in or soccer fields or this or that they play some of these random bowl games in. You could raise the level of quality in that regard. So good idea, Pierce. Not bad. Pretty good start there as we look at how to figure out the bowl games and all those things. Speaking of figuring out plans, this holiday season, make sure you order some Socorro tequila from our friends over there with free shipping on 3 bottles or more. Click on the link in our episode and show description page when you can. It is a great opportunity to try an award-winning tequila, and they have really stepped up their game. They even have a really special bottle that they just added to the store. It was there when I looked before the show, so hopefully it's still there. But look, the 5-year extra añejo. Really excited to get my hands on this and try this, but it is sold out right now. So you can make sure that you're right there on the site. Keep checking and see if they get more of it. But it is a fantastic try, a really unique tequila and something that they're continuing to work on. But Socorro Tequila, an award-winning tequila brand for us that we're partnered with. So we're really excited about we continue to work with them and host great events with them when we're out and about. We have Socorro with us, so appreciate their support of All Access AM. And you guys, for listening, make sure you hit that subscribe button to All Access AM. If you are watching us on Twitter, if you're watching us on Facebook or somewhere else, Google All Access AM YouTube, and you'll pull us right up. You could also scan the QR code in the upper corner of your screen there. We appreciate all of you guys for watching with us. We are going to have Stephen Wagner of CaneSport join us in about 10 minutes, and he'll break down what is going on in Miami now that they are in to the college football playoff. He'll talk about where things are headed there for the Hurricanes as they get ready for their trip to College Station to face the Texas A&M Aggies, a team that for large part was headed in the right direction to winning the SEC, but they stumbled late and they weren't able to overcome that. And obviously now get to host a home playoff game, a little Saturday morning action there in College Station where the Hurricanes will be getting after it, trying to advance in the college football playoff. Let's do this. We'll talk about that in a few moments. Georgia Tech, John Summerall's offensive coordinator, and the Yellow Jackets, as Brent Key said, had 36 resumes to his binder that he was going through on the offensive coordinator search. But one is emerging right now as a name of note in this search. Yes, Chip Kelly. He helped Ohio State win a national championship last season and then ended up heading to the NFL where he was with the Raiders but was let go in November. Now on the prowl for an offensive coordinator job, and we know that Georgia Tech will pay up. This is a name to watch as things heat up. And he's somebody that really fits as with his run game and all the different ways that they present it in that offense. This would be a really intriguing hire, a high-level hire for the ACC to go out and get somebody with the cachet, with the name recognition of a Chip Kelly. So really watching this one closely. And even Jackets Online of On3 and Rivals even reported that so a huge bit of news there coming as Chip Kelly was in Atlanta for practices for the bowl game and kind of taking things in. So what an observation by our friends over there at Jackets Online. Do a great job in the Georgia Tech market, and they were all over it there. So keep an eye on that, and we will also keep you guys in the loop on if other names emerge. Again, on3.com, make sure you pick up a subscription for just $1 and try it out. If you've got your favorite ACC team, we likely have a website covering that. And you also get access to all the national names like Pete Nako, Steve Wiltfong, and more. Plenty of names on that Georgia Tech offensive coordinator hot board that our friends at Jackets Online discuss. So a really intriguing name emerging there in Chip Kelly as gets ready to watch things unfold there in Atlanta in this bowl game. Maybe they get him in there and maybe they start implementing things. Who knows? But what a fascinating hire that would be for the ACC, and just another sign that things are investment in some of the hiring that is being done across the league. James Franklin getting paid, all the new contracts for people like Brent Key, Rhett Lashley, and around the league, and of course Mario Cristobal probably going to get a new deal as well. But something, I'm shocked and I know that the media will do this sometimes, but I'm shocked at the names on this Michigan coaching search hot board that our friend Pete Nakos has shared. And I'm not going to share all of them because they're behind a pay. But whenever I saw the graphic that Brian Kelly was on there for this hot board, I just kind of rubbed my hands and was like, what a weird situation that would be. Obviously, Michigan fans, I'm sure, had it out for Brian Kelly when he was the head coach at Notre Dame, but he's also had the most success that he's had up in the Midwest, at Central Michigan, at Cincinnati, at Notre Dame. So he just was not able to put it together in Baton Rouge. Sharon Moore gets fired and obviously now arrested for alleged assault, and that whole process will play out. Fired for cause, so Michigan is not having to pay some crazy buyout here, but it is a world where, will we see anybody in the ACC get plucked? And right now, nobody on that list from the ACC, and I think that's obviously a good thing. The league has a really high level of coaches in it right now for the most part, and you don't, if you're an ACC fan, want any of those for this Michigan job. But having a Kalen DeBoer on the hot board, seeing his name floated now for kind of that second straight Big Ten job that's at a high level. Penn State had his name on the list. Michigan now will be looking to make a big hire. If you're asking me who I think, just kind of throwing a dart at a dartboard here to see who it'd be, I think in today's day and age of general managers and all these different things kind of popping up in these coaching searches as being important and having that side of it built out so you don't always have to rely on the coaches to kind of run it as much. But Jesse Minter, former Michigan standout, could be a really intriguing name in this search. He's the Los Angeles Chargers defensive coordinator, somebody who's well versed with the Michigan program, and just somebody that they would obviously love to have. And he's not a Michigan alum, but he was somebody who's just been around that program so much, and I think that is one name to keep an eye on. But they'll also have to kind of contend with the NFL and how the Chargers would want to handle that and see if they give them permission and all of those things as they sit right there at 9-4 in the middle of the playoff hunt in the AFC West. So that's something that they're not going to let him from right away. But Pete Nakos did report that he fully expects Michigan to have a head coach in place by the transfer portal, January 2nd. So things are heating up there, and it'll be really interesting to watch and see how all of that unfolds. But this is a wild situation that is unfolding with Michigan and they're operating this coaching search after things have now, kind of cooled off in the carousel with all the hires being made. And you've got to look at Ward Manuel and say, all right, this is the time to make a big hire and kind of unexpected. But I'm also of the opinion that if Michigan beats Ohio State, Sharon Moore is probably still the head coach. So we'll see how it goes there. As you look at the college football matchups, we're going to preview game by game those matchups on Monday next week. So we'll be able to give you guys a preview of all of those and let you guys know what we think, what our game picks are, and we'll get some people in to kind of preview some of those as well. So excited about that. But there is going to be a number of bowl games to keep an eye on, and Stephen Wagner of CaneSport is logging on to just join us in just a moment as the headliner. Miami at Texas A&M, a game that we're all going to have our eyes and ears peeled for as the preparations continue and Miami gets ready to represent the ACC in the college football playoff. So we're talking with Stephen Wagner in just a moment. But before we do that, do have a reminder for you guys, BigGameUSA.com. That's BigGameUSA.com is where you can get all the latest balls of your favorite team, including the Miami Hurricanes official college football playoff ball You can get that at biggameusa.com. Great opportunity to get a last-minute Christmas gift here and get those for your favorite college football fan as well. This is a perfect time to get that again and get a 10% off discount and free shipping when you use code BEON325. That's BEON325. Great chance to get that all lined up for your favorite college football fan this holiday season. Biggameusa.com. Get the official game ball for any of your college football teams and use code BEON325 to get a discount on those. So really special opportunity there for Miami fans to get that game ball, get that official game ball for the college football playoff lined up. And we're excited to continue to give you guys those deals. So we're going to be previewing Miami at Texas A&M in just a second with Stephen Wagner, but just kind of final thought here on where we're at in the calendar. This is a really well done calendar for college football right now. They've got a couple of things to tweak, but I think we're seeing the separation of the early signing period that first week of December, the transfer portal here in the first couple days of January. And it's going to allow a lot of these college coaches time to, one, make sure that their current team is locked back in with contracts. That's something you're going to start to see a lot of, is these colleges getting guys back for the 2026 season. You're going to see a lot of these players re-signing contracts. They'll do announcements. They'll do this. They'll do that. This is, if you've ever played the college football game, or should I say the Madden game, when you're in that re-sign phase of the game where you have an opportunity to re-sign the players before free agency hits, that's what this is. And so you're going to tick the day away, and trying to get your roster all signed back on that you want to get signed back on for next year before you hit the free agency portion of the game. And that's when you can start offering contracts and doing this and doing that to a lot of these outside opportunities to bring in players that we have in college football in today's day and age. So going to be fascinating to watch that unfold. But I think from talking with a couple coaches around the country, the calendar is in a really good spot now. Not having the spring portal window, making sure everybody has this one opportunity to sign players, to get them back on board, and then you have your chance to go after players and add them into the fold. That's something that is really, really important to a lot of these college coaches to have that, lined up, I think, in that one single lane. I am of the belief that, man, it would be nice to go to, I just want to say, kind of quote unquote, force these kids, these young men, to be at the same program for the spring. If there's been a coaching change, just let them go through it, see if they like it. But at the end of the day, that's me more saying, hey, maybe that settles the waters of some of the moving and shaking, and then that one portal window is after the spring. But these college coaches, they want their one portal window to be ahead of spring ball so they can get as many of the guys in and get them all acclimated to their new setting so that they can build that team camaraderie. And one team that certainly did that through the portal and working all of those angles is Miami. And Stephen Wagner joins us now from CaneSport. Somebody who just a week ago, we were talking about what Miami needed from the College Football Playoff Committee was a spot in the playoff, and they got it, of course, at the expense of Notre Dame, which is fine in ACC country. But Stephen, just your initial reaction to what Miami, got in terms of getting into the playoff and the opportunity they have now.
Well, the committee got it right was my biggest takeaway. This was something that we thought should have been scenario all along, that Miami should be ahead of Notre Dame. It was baffling to so many of us, the fact that Miami was not ahead of Notre Dame this entire time. I mean, I remember our boards, or looking at our boards whenever they came out with the initial rankings, and the kind of consensus opinion among the boards was Notre Dame is ranked that high, even though they have 2 losses and we beat them. So I think that this first class was, or the initial ranking was definitely a little bit generous to Notre Dame, but this is ultimately what we were waiting for. We were waiting for Miami and Notre Dame to be placed side by side so that they have absolutely no excuse not to directly compare the two teams and reward the head-to-head that Miami played with Notre Dame. Because otherwise, what is the point of playing these games? If the results on the field do not matter, then why should this game even be played? And I think that just really goes against everything that football stands for. That goes against the idea of competitive sport, is not rewarding winners and slightly punishing losers. You know, am I thrilled with the process that the committee went through to be able to get here? No, definitely not. Do I think that the use of a buffer team in BYU between Miami and Notre Dame to basically, I don't know, I forget how Juracek actually said it, but basically to buy them to buy the committee time so they didn't have to compare the two. Do I think that that's just straight up stupid? Yeah, I do. I think that's really, really dumb. But at the end of the day, the committee did get it right. Miami's getting ready for a playoff game, and I got to say, looking at Texas A&M, I really do think that this is a good winnable matchup for Miami. I mean, you look at what Texas A&M's strengths and weaknesses are. Their biggest weaknesses right now are run defense, which I really thought got exposed, pretty well against Texas, and throwing the deep ball. And Miami defends the deep ball extremely well, and Mario Cristobal wants to pound the rock as much as he can. Now, of course, most of Miami's success this year has had some sort of relation to Carson Beck. There's been a direct correlation of whenever Carson Beck has had good games and played well, Miami's done pretty well too. Carson Beck has played really, really well since that loss to SMU. He's got 11 touchdowns and 1 interception since that loss. I think Miami is getting ready to play their best ball. It's kind of been a little bit of a difference from what Miami's been the last couple of years under Mario Cristobal, where it's felt like they've kind of crumbled and fallen apart a little bit in November. I would say Miami's probably playing their best football right now. It really felt like they came together and they put together their first real 4-quarter performance against NC State, and then 2 weeks later they turn around and they just absolutely demolish Pittsburgh in a game that honestly I think in previous years they probably would have lost. I mean, this finally is the team that Miami fans have been waiting for. It's the team that Mario Cristobal has been waiting for. I mean, this is, it's finally here. The moment's arrived. Miami's wanted the moment. They're getting the moment. And I think a lot of people are really fired up.
As they should be. It's quite the trip for Miami, a place that maybe a couple of those Hurricanes are familiar with, having played at Texas A&M really recently, and this is two good football teams and really kind of at least when Jimbo Fisher was there, I felt like this was kind of that perfect animosity of two teams that spend big and kind of talk a big talk, and now Miami and Texas A&M are walking the walk along with that, with Mario Cristobal getting into the playoff, Mike Elko doing his thing. Where do you think some of the challenges are that Miami faces with this Texas A&M team? And in particular, I kind of circle that defensive line that they're going to have to contend with over there in College Station.
Yeah, so I kind of very, very loosely put Texas A&M on Frog Watch. Whenever I watched that game against South Carolina, I thought South Carolina exposed massive, massive issues, but South Carolina just didn't have the coaching and didn't have the roster to be able to take advantage of those issues over the course of 4 quarters. I thought Texas absolutely exposed and took advantage of every issue that Texas A&M has. They consistently took deep shots, and they were rewarded with pass interference calls. They ran the ball really, really well against Texas A&M, and that was a Texas offense that had really struggled to run. I mean, they were not a good running team by any means. They had not had a 100-yard rusher the entire season until Trey Wisner went for what I think like 150 yards against Texas A&M or something like that. I mean, they made Texas A&M's defensive line and kind of the way they played, they helped Texas look like they were a solid running team that had been playing well the entire season. Now, how much of that you want to chalk up to halftime adjustments and Steve Sarkisian kind of being able to, find a little bit of a scheme that works and, kind of fiddling with, different run schemes and that sort of stuff. and how much of that you want to chalk up to the fact that, yeah, that was a really, really big rivalry game. You can kind of toss records out the window. Players on both teams are going to be playing with a ton of emotion. I mean, that's absolutely valid too. But for me, whenever I look at what consistently travels to rivalry games and stuff like that, and what consistently travels out of rivalry games, for me typically it's trenches play and being able to run the football. And my takeaway was Texas A&M faced an offensive line that wasn't good but was kind of okay in Texas, and really did not have anywhere near the level of success that they'd been able to have in previous matchups. Um, uh, their offensive line faced a defensive line in Texas that had a lot of success on the season, absolutely was bona fide good. And I mean, Texas's defensive line was able to very consistently get pressure on Marcel Reed. I think Miami has just as good a defensive line as Texas. They absolutely have a much, 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 much better offensive line. I don't think there's any doubt there. I think this is going to be the best rushing attack that Miami has faced this year. I think that Miami's rushing attack straight up is better than Notre Dame's. I think that with a healthy running back room, Miami should be able to rotate enough of these backs in that they're going to be able to stay fresh and that they're going to be good into the fourth quarter. I mean, I really do feel good about kind of the way that this lines up for Miami. If you look at the Hard Rock Sportsbook, which is the legal sports betting partner here in South Florida, I believe right now the line is Texas A&M minus 3.5. If I'm betting on this game, I am taking Miami plus 3.5 all freaking day long. Miami's obviously going to have to get pressure on Marcel Reed, which I do think they'll be able to. Marcel Reed can run really, really well. He's shown that all year long. But I think Miami's defensive line is going to play well enough that they're going to be able to squeeze the pocket, that they're going to be able to chase him down. They'll be able to get, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 sacks, and then just force him to consistently throw the deep ball. I think Corey Heatherman has done a phenomenal job in his first year. Obviously, he as Miami's defensive coordinator, obviously he's up for the Broyles Award, and he is a Broyles Award finalist, and very, very deservingly so. He has done an awesome, awesome job here. But I think he really, really does a great job of understanding opponents' weaknesses and opponents' strengths. And I think exactly what he's probably going to end up doing is trying to dare Texas A&M throw the deep ball. We want to be challenged whenever you go deep, because Texas A&M really took, what felt like 3 actual deep shots against Texas. One of them was intercepted. They asked Marcel Reed to make one really long cross-field throw against Texas, and that one was intercepted. So I think that Texas and South Carolina kind of gave Miami the blueprint for how to beat Texas A&M. And not to mention, like I said, Miami's playing their best football right now. If you look at the way that Texas A&M has played over the last month, would you really say that they're playing their best football? I'm not sure I would.
I'm right there with you on Texas A&M not playing its best football. I think the last 2 matchups in particular, South Carolina and Texas, like you've talked about, really showed, hey, they are. A&M at a certain point was kind of looking like, all right, they're going to stifle you defensively. They're going to hold on to the football. They've got some really intriguing weapons with Casey Concepcion and Mario Craver and that whole crew at receiver. And, Marcel Reed is the one kind of, making all the decisions. And, it's just been really, really, high level stuff. And for whatever reason, they've just not looked the same those last couple of games. And now I'm interested to see how Mike Elko does kind of getting into his bag in terms of preparing for this college football playoff. He's got time. Mario Cristobal has time. Everybody should look well rested and well prepared for this game. Neither one of them played in a conference championship game. If I'm looking at this one, though, I think the run game for Miami, which I feel like it was just yesterday, we were watching that outstanding Shannon Dawson press conference breaking it all down. And that run game is where everything lies. And I'm worried about it going against that Texas A&M defensive line, just like I am worried about Texas A&M being able to run the football on Miami. And I don't know if either team is going to be able to do it, but just Miami, kind of the questions around their run game kind of throughout the season here and there is what kind of concerns me. Maybe you could shed more light on what they need to do to have the day that they need to on the ground.
Yeah, I do think that that's a fair kind of criticism of Miami, or a fair question around Miami is what about this run game? Because whenever Miami's run game is really, really struggling is whenever they're getting really conservative with their run play calling. I mean, it's just inside zone and it's duo over and over and over again. They just want to beat it to death. Mario Cristobal has a little bit of a tendency to just lean back into this idea of, yeah, we are tougher than you. We're just going to beat you with toughness. We do not care if you know exactly what we are doing. We are going to run this football down your throat. That's what he wants to be at his core. Now, obviously, you cannot always be that guy. At some point, you are going to run into an opponent that is going to say, "Oh, we know that you're going to run the same run play over and over and over again." Thanks. I mean, sure, we'll load up the box. We'll happily stop you for 1 to 2 yards. Maybe we'll get a tackle for a loss here and there. We'll force you to 3rd and long, and we'll force you to consistently convert 3rd and longs. I think as long as Miami does not stay conservative with its run game and they're able to maintain, some sort of element of balance in terms of how they're throwing the football, the way that they're attacking the perimeter with the football, they're able to keep the box somewhat light. They're able to call a couple of these tendency breakers. Maybe running the ball when you're not necessarily expecting to run it. Throwing it maybe when you're not necessarily expecting to throw it. I mean, that really is, I think, whenever Miami's kind of at its best, because whenever this run game is really struggling and whenever the offense is really struggling, I mean, bottom line, it comes down to predictability. And, I think that most Miami fans who have, watched this team over the last couple of years would agree with you. And they would say, yeah, whenever we're not whenever we're not playing really well, I can tell you exactly when we're going to run the ball. I can tell you exactly when we're going to throw it. I think if Miami plays kind of fast and loose and free and they're, zipping the ball all over the place, and Carson Beck is really, really locked in, and they're not just having to, overly rely on an offensive line to dominate at the line of scrimmage over and over again on a handful of, very, very kind of basic run plays, I think that this team really is going to be just fine. But it really does come down to kind of how conservative Miami is going to end up playing. But, I got to say, one thing that I do tip my hat to Mario Cristobal for is in these, ranked matchups, especially out of conference matchups, he does a pretty freaking good job of kind of unhitching the trailer and just kind of telling Shannon Dawson, his offensive coordinator, man, call your best play. Call this play like you want to win this game. Just whatever pleases you. Now, you can criticize his fourth quarter management sometimes because, sometimes it feels like he kind of goes into the 4-minute drill with 9 minutes left in the fourth quarter. But whenever they have played really well in these out-of-conference games, I mean, Shannon Dawson really has called stuff that's got them zipping the ball all over the field.
And Shannon Dawson does have a good experience for this type of a game. This isn't, they're walking in, without, having somebody at the helm that really will have a good feel for it. And you look at the way they manage that game up at Notre Dame. I think that was a big, turning point, or not up at Notre Dame, but the game against Notre Dame and just how they were still able to close that one out. That sticks out to me. I think the Miami learnings from those Louisville and SMU games are really, really important for this Miami team as far as how they want to close things out. You look at what they did to Pitt, a couple weeks after that, and able to kind of put their foot on their throat and really not let them up. A Pitt team that, has a lot of talent, I think, and just maybe not just there yet to play on Miami's level, obviously. And Texas A&M is going to be a big challenge. It's a defense, though, that, can give it up in spurts. And, I think Carson Beck is going to have to be at his very best. But at the same time, this defensive line, a guy like Ruben Bain coming into this one, I don't know if you guys have gotten to talk with him since some of the comments from the Texas A&M offensive line, but what were the reactions in Miami's world when Texas A&M kind of said, we're not going to have a problem with Ruben Bain?
Yeah, there was quite a bit of laughter. This idea that really you're not going to have a problem with projected first-round draft pick and probably the top pass rusher in the ACC, a guy who has consistently, beaten pretty much any offensive tackle that he's gone up against. You know, I'm not sure if I'd say this is the best offensive line that Ruben Bain will have faced this fall, because I do think that Notre Dame actually does really have a pretty decent offensive line, and Ruben Bain had a very, very good game against Notre Dame. But man, I mean, if they want to sit there and just give a team bulletin board material, I guess go ahead. That's your prerogative. It's a free country, man. Do whatever you want to do. It's definitely not to be doing with a guy like Ruben Bain, but you can bet your bottom dollar kind of the way that this kid works is that he'll have this quote taped up in his locker or something like that, or he'll be doing something crazy like listening to the quote every night before he goes to bed. It kind of reminds me of oh man, what was that movie? The Program. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of in The Program, that film session, wherever they're looking at tape and they're asking the linebacker, "What's your assignment on this play? What's your assignment on this play? What's your assignment on this play?" It just gets a little bit more violent every time. It's kill the quarterback, destroy the lead blocker, and then finally he just goes, kill everybody. Like I kind of feel like that's how this is probably going to end up. Is Ruben Bain's going to be sitting there and he's going to be going, kill. I think I would be stunned if he doesn't have at least a sack against Texas A&M. Now, I also thought that Texas's defensive line would have a little bit more impressive stat box against Texas A&M because Texas does have, a bona fide good defensive line. They have a bona fide good pass rusher over there in Colin Simmons that I think is kind of comparable to Ruben Bain. And, you saw in the game, Colin Simmons was able to very consistently get pressure, but Marcel Reed, he's really, really elusive in the pocket. He moves extremely well. He knows when to scramble. He is not afraid to lose his leg or to use his legs. Texas, at the end of the day, only ended up with one sack on Marcel Reed, even though they were consistently getting pressure on him. So if I'm Ruben Bain, I am kind of, taking some lessons from that. You look at this and you say, okay, here's a defensive line that also got pressure on Texas A&M, and this is kind of how A&M was sort of able to navigate it. This is how they were able to avoid some of that pressure, or at least minimize it a little bit. So, if I'm Ruben Bain, I'm aware that, hey, Marcel Reed is going to step up in the pocket. He is going to spin left or spin right out of some of these pressures. He is going to look to get rid of the ball a little bit quicker sometimes. But Ruben Bain, he also is, just worldly experienced at this point. He's been playing in big football games for 3 years now. Obviously, this is the biggest football game that he's ever played in. But he's been a really good football player for 3 years. Last year, obviously, he dealt with some injuries that kind of set him back a little bit. But this year, he has been really, really damn good again. And I think that this is kind of, the moment that he's been waiting for. And, I got to tell you, I do not think that Ruben Bain will have a problem getting pressure on Texas A&M's defensive line. Maybe that's just me calling my shot. Maybe that's just me being arrogant. But, man, whenever you look at, whenever Texas A&M's faced good defensive lines, they've given up a little bit of pressure. Marcel Reed hasn't always gotten sacked, but they have given up a little bit of pressure. And you look at a Texas A&M team that kind of has to reverse trajectory because they have lost 2 out of their last 3 games. And you look at a Miami team that lost to Louisville, lost to SMU. It felt like there weren't enough lifeboats on the Titanic. It felt like this ship was actively sinking. But they've corrected it, and they are playing really, really, really good football right now. And I would trust the team that's playing really good football more than the team that's lost 2 out of 3. And it looks like it's kind of having maybe even a little bit of an identity crisis.
It'll be fascinating to watch unfold. Stephen Wagner, thanks so much for the time this morning from CaneSport. Make sure you guys check him out on Twitter as well. And follow them along as this is going to be a huge, huge deal for the ACC as they get a team into the college football playoff and one headed to College Station to face Texas A&M. Stephen, thanks so much for the time.
Thanks, Billy.
There you go. Stephen Wagner joining us on All Access AM. We appreciate his time and appreciate all of you guys for tuning in. Appreciate VLC 3979 Canes. Let's go. CANES. I know, but tried to shorten it up for you there. Appreciate you. Please hit the subscribe button, VLC, if you're not already. Subscribe to All Access AM on YouTube, everyone. We appreciate you guys helping us get over 200. Now we are on to that push for 500. Big number, big goals as we get to the college football playoff, just like Miami, hoping to win it all now that they've got their shot. So we'll be tracking it all and have much more on All Access AM next week, starting on Monday, going Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, 7 to 8 a.m. Central Time, live, 8 to 9 Eastern Time for you guys out there. We appreciate all of you guys who support us, who watch us, who comment. It was great having guys like Pony Up 214 and Tom and Pierce and VLC in the chat with us this morning. So thanks so much for joining us, and appreciate our friends at Horn Legend, hornlegend.com. Use code PONY, P-O-N-Y, for free shipping. This holiday season, you can get your order in, maybe get that last minute Christmas gift for your family members or just even yourself. I mean, you want to look good around the Christmas dinner table or holiday dinner table as well. So make sure you get your orders in with our friends at Horn Legend. We've had a ton of clicks on the link in our podcast description channel. So appreciate you guys for doing that. And thank you, VLC. Great to see you. We'll see you next week, everyone. Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, 7 to 8 a.m. Central Time on All Access AM. I'm Billy Embody. Thanks for listening. Have a great week.